Hari Om, Hari Om, we're good? Yes, Hari Om. Do you want me to, we're good? Okay. Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om. Testing, testing. 1, 2, 3. We stand as one family, bound to each other with love and respect. Okay, good, okay. AV's giving me weird looks. All right. So we'll go ahead and get started with opening prayers. So we'll do Om Sahna Bhavatu, Vakraturna Mahakaya, Saraswati Namastubhyam, and Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu. Om Sahana Bhavatu, Sahano Bhunaktu, Saha Viryam Karavavahai, Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Vakratunda Mahakaya Surya Koti Samaprabha Nirvignam Kurume Deva Sarvakaryeshu Sarvada Saraswati Namastobhyam Varade Kamarupini Vidyarambham Karishyami Siddhir Bhavatu Me Sada Gurur Brahma Gurur Vishnu Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha Gurureva Param Brahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. All right, so there's the concept we presented 2 weeks ago. I know it was 2 or 3 weeks ago, something like that, with Star Wars. But that beginning slide is the most important Vedantic concept we were looking at, which is vasanas itself. Vasanas. And if you were there last time, do you remember the flow? There were 4 things that fit in this flow. From vasanas, it's very intangible. It is deep within, dormant, and often we can't recognize it until it takes further forms, right? So vasanas are impressions left behind from past actions. And this is subtle. This is my definition and scale. Okay? So impressions left behind from past actions. And this is the most subtle part. And we carry this from lifetime to lifetime. From this, what does it create within us within this lifetime? What does it create? Desires. That bubbles and boils into the next form called desires. Or in Sanskritam, kama. Kama. This is I plus I want. Puja Gurudev writes it like this, where it's I plus I want. Now this is an important formula we'll come back to in terms of dealing with desires. Or another way that Puja Gurudev writes in his book is ego and egocentric desires. You'll see the same phrase. Ego plus egocentric desires. Or in I'm giving you variations just so that we can pick up on these concepts wherever we end up looking at our Shastras. In Ramayana, when there's a conversation between Lakshmanji and Ramji, he says, can you explain to me what Maya is? And Bhagwan defined it in 2 simple words, aham and mama. Aham means I. Sorry, let me put it in English. Aham plus mama. Not ma'am, not mama, like mother. Mama means mine. Because what I want becomes, this is mine. There's that desire and attachment. Okay, from this, vasanas and desires, it takes on the next more aggressive, tangible form. What would that be? What comes next? Thank you. Somebody's looking at their notes. Thoughts and plans. This is when our intellect mind and intellect, I'll put both. The mind-intellect complex makes plans and decisions. Now again, the reason I put mind and intellect together is because when we look at the thought process, it's all just simply a flow of thoughts. There's no separate organ called mind and a separate organ called intellect. It's all one and the same thing, but the mode in which it functions is where we designate it as body-mind. I had a BMI chart here, but anyways. When the thoughts are in the mode of considering things, working things out, processing a lot of information. There's a lot of, is it this, is it that, is it maybe something else, that contemplative, that digesting, that chaos that it churns through. We say that that's the mode of the mind. Okay, after all that thorough analysis, no, this is the right thing to do. No, I'm going to make this. I'm going to choose to do this. When it comes to a decisive point, then we say it's functioning as an intellect. It is the one that overrides all emotions and says, I don't care what you think, this is what I'm going to do. So that's why we say making plans can be like the mind, debating, considering different options, all of that. And finally, it makes a decision. That's why I call it as mind, intellect, complex put together. Okay, then what's the last stage from this? There's one right, it's okay, you snuck it in there. Krodha, Lobha is after that. Before that comes as actions. So like, for example, in the court of law, there is the worst case where I commit murder, but you only get punished for that murder. There's also something they consider, premeditative murder, or it is spontaneous, right? Have you been thinking about this and have the intention to cause harm? That makes a more severe punishment for a wrong action. Whereas other times, there's a non-premeditative action. Now here's another thing, a different way to consider. If I never performed the action and had premeditative thoughts, but never did the act, can I still get punished? In the court of law, no. Until I see it done, I can't punish you. This is just to bring to the forepoint that a lot of stuff can happen within the mind, but they're not yet seen. We cross some sort of threshold when we make it manifest in terms of action. So it's a very interesting thought process here. There's a distinction between what goes on within, finally translating that into action. It's a big deal. So even if we think about it in the court of law, we can see that distinction. I can't punish you for hating somebody, but I can punish you if you harm that person. And I will take into consider if you have been thinking about it for a long time. So that's the example for this. Okay, so this was a review from last time. Now, we have one main goal when it comes to dealing with vasanas. Can you tell me what our shastras keep telling us when it comes to dealing with vasanas? What do they tell us to do? Exhaust them. Same answer? Any different answers? I'd like to hear any variations as well. Something seems... Okay, good one. So we have two options here. Exhausting, and also considering as samskara. So since you brought up this topic, can you tell us what does samskara mean? Okay, you're asking me a question. I'm trying to get you to tell me an answer. What is the definition of samskara as you know? This should come from Introduction to Hinduism in our curriculum. Guruji has given a very good definition of samskaras. So your answer is the ability to make a choice regardless of the vasanas I have. Not quite, not quite. I see where you're making that connection, but not quite. What you described is the power of the intellect. This is just the capacity to choose. And we said we can make choices, and we're connecting it to the last workshop we had. The choices it can make is either preyas or shreyas, right? And if you make shreyas choices, I can see your connection now, it leads to samskaras. This is where things are. Does samskara lead to exhausting vasanas? That's where our question is right now. Yes? Okay. Some say yes. Does anyone disagree? Because I'm still performing actions. I'm still going to get vasanas because it's a constant loop. Because what's our definition? Impressions left behind by past actions. Even Shreyas is still an action. So what's going on? Any thoughts? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. So exhausting would be one is accepting, living it out, and through somewhat of adhering to samskara, we can maybe exhaust those vasanas. Did I catch that right? Yes, okay. Good, because the reason why I'm pushing and just prodding along is because we need to start digesting these concepts. How does it all work together? So I will make a connection now with what is samskara and how does it lead to exhausting vasanas. But before I give that example, this is where I'm going with it. The whole point of choosing actions now, we have to be careful with what sort of desires I have, what sort of thoughts and plans I make, and what decisions I make. Because now I need to know what is my purpose in life. Yes, thank you, I saw that. So anytime we have answers in the group, if you could please remember to have the mic on hand when we answer. So for now, we can keep the mic down. I'll explain, and when I ask a question again, we'll do that. Thank you for reminding me. Okay, so where was I? Intellect, finding particular choices. Now, it's not just enough to say I want to become a good person, I want to lead a good life. There's got to be more. Right? So we have to now define what is the goal of life. In one shastric word, what is the goal of life? Please pick up the mic.
Moksha.
Moksha. All right. So, moksha. And how would you define moksha? What is moksha in one English word? Huh? Nirvana? Okay, if you could just... Don't be nervous.
Nirvana.
Give me another English word.
Yeah.
What does moksha mean?
Is it liberation?
Yes, that's the one. Liberation. Oh gosh, I can't spell. Liberation. Okay, there we go. So, this is a good answer. This is our standard answer. This has to be our default. But this means liberation from what? I'm liberated. Okay, cool. From what cage? From what bounds? So we have to always automatically define what that is. Liberation, we see in Shastra saying, from the cycle of birth and death, right? We also say liberation from vasanas. From vasanas. Salvation is, oh, you're bringing up a good word.
Non-Hindu.
Thank you. This is a non-Hindu word, salvation. So I'll address that. Salvation comes from the Abrahamic perspective. Salvation means that because I believe in Jesus or Muhammad or the Jewish equivalent, I'm not too sure, but because I believe in them, my soul is saved from doomsday. I am not going to suffer the sufferings of doomsday. I will be protected, and therefore I'll be in the sanctuary of heaven. Is that our concept at all here? No. So salvation does not apply. So I'm going to cross this off now after I've given my reason. Salvation is not my word here. That is not the concept we have here. Liberation is more accurate because I'm becoming liberated from things that bind me. That requires self-effort and self-purification, chitta shuddhi, chitta ekagrata. So our sadhana becomes relevant when we start putting it in terms of, I want to free myself. From what? From cycles of birth and death, or the effects of vasanas. Because we said, vasanas are the impressions left behind by past actions. They determine what is my next birth. So vasanas and cycle of birth and death are very much related. It is the cause and an effect. Okay? So now the main question is, how do I become liberated from my vasanas? And that's where the word exhausting vasanas becomes an application. So now we've come to the main question. How do I exhaust my vasanas? How do I exhaust my vasanas? How can I act in such a way that I can start exhausting my vasanas? What happened? If you don't mind, just to share your thoughts, it's okay. Yeah.
I think this is where the prapta and arabdha or something comes in play, wherein we are looking at the cause and effect of the past actions or past life and how that we can exhaust it, right? So it is based on, my past action, if it was a negative, then it is going to have a negative aura. So I need to convert that as a positive to ensure that I get into prayers rather than shreyas, and to exhaust that.
You mean the other way around, to get into
shreyas instead of prayers. To exhaust that negative thought.
Yes, there we go. Now we're heading in that direction, right? So now let me bring in that example that comes in Atma Bodha to explain why choosing Shreyas helps me exhaust vasanas. How Shreyas helps me exhaust vasanas. Have you heard of the Kataka nut? Kataka nut? No, okay. So in India, when you have a pot and it's filled with water collected from the river, it is polluted with a lot of other things in there, right? And it's all suspended within the water. So this nut, what they do is they powder it into ash, into a powder, and they put it into the pot. What does it do? It forms a film that sits on top of the surface of the water, and as it gets wet, slowly it will start to sink to the bottom. This film will start to sink. As it's going, it creates sedimentation, where as it goes down, it catches every other impurity and drags it along with itself to the bottom. So it's a filtration system. So that way, by using that Kataka nut, it brings to the bottom, and what are you left behind with? Pure water. Now, the Kataka nut is also an impurity added. The dirt is also an impurity that's there. Both are there. They're not very different. The only thing is, this particular powder has the property to drag and remove all others. So, this would be samskara. This would be vikaras. And this pot is our mind and intellect. So, vikaras are all past actions that we've done, prayas. Those that are driven by I and I want. That egocentric desires that constantly keeps accumulating, and it pollutes the quality of my mind. So, when I take the choices of Shreyas, it is still an impression. It is still a certain type of vasana that I am allowing my mind to have, but it's such a kind of impression that it helps me exhaust all the others. And more importantly, we have to come back to this principle here. I and I want. How exactly is it removing that? Samskaras are dealing with this notion of I and I want. It is undoing this fundamental principle within desires so that any action made is then skips directly to action, and it's able to exhaust vasanas without continuing this cycle. Okay, what do I mean by that? We still need further explanation. This is when the principle of karma yoga becomes very important. And just like our students in assembly class, what is our definition of karma yoga? Can anyone give me that? What is it? Thank you. Karma yoga is selfless action dedicated to a higher altar. And I found it really funny that she forgot the most important adjective in this definition. The whole word, a sentence gets mute if this very important word called selflessness doesn't come into play. Karma Yoga is a spirit of surrender, dedication to an outer world. The world will remain the same, but my attitude in how I interact with it has completely changed. It is this selflessness. Just even in the word itself, selfless, without the self. So what am I doing? I am getting rid of I and all of its extensions. I'm getting rid of the I and the I want. So then who's doing it? Oh. That's when a lot of the verses in Gita come into play. Bhagwan will flow through us and we become the flute in his hands. It is Ishvara, it is Prarabdha, there's so many things can account for who is actually now performing it. If I remove ego and egocentric desires, I am just part of the world as is. I have nothing to do with it. And like we saw in Gita verse today, one who has a steady intellect, who is undiluted, is able to reap the results of anything they have with samatvam. I am not rejoicing because of things I gain that are pleasant, nor do I grieve by gaining things that are unpleasant to me, because they've completely undone this. I have become selfless. So karma yoga becomes relevant in trying to exhaust our vasanas. Now, how does that work? There's one other, I have to be a little poetic here because this is where the good stuff is. You know, you can sit and revel in these feelings. There is one poem by Kabir Das ji. Excuse my Hindi, I don't speak Hindi and I found this, so I will apologize for my pronunciation right now. Prema gali ati sankari, tame do na samai. So the gali, the alleyway of prema, or bhakti in this case, is very, very sankari, very narrow. Bhakti is not this all-compassing vastness that exists. It's very small gully. There's not enough space for do. There's not enough space for two. So the next line is, Jab main tha, tab hari nahi. Ab hari hai, main nahi. And I think I'll send a link to the song. Even Yuva Rhythms have sung this song now. Whenever I am there, jab main, I. When I'm there, Hari is not. Bhagwan and Ishvara has been blocked. When Bhagwan is there, there's not even room for this little I. There's not even room for this self. Sab andhiyara mit gaya, jab deepak dekhya mahi. I may have butchered that last one, I apologize. But the meaning is that because the only way to get rid of andhiyara, that darkness, is when I see the light. When I understand that this I and I want is that darkness, and I see and recognize Hari, Bhagwan, then this will go. This is the principle of how I practice karma yoga. Selflessness is the most important aspect when it comes to performing any actions. So now we have to look at this in practical terms. What does this look like now to behave in the world outside? What should be my mindset? What should be my motivations behind any choice that I make? And how do I determine what's the right thing to do and what wrong thing to do? When we keep in mind, moksha is my goal, the effect is exhausting sadhana, and the means by which I achieve this is to perform selfless actions. So goal is important. We have to know where we're going, 1. We have to understand the principle of how we can accomplish that, 2. And what is the practical application and methods for achieving that, 1, 2, and 3. So now give me a moment. I'm going to turn the board around. I'll leave this on so we can always take pictures of it later. All right. So both in Self-Unfoldment and the book we're studying, Art of Living, the chapter we're going to be looking at is where he goes over the concept of the 3 types of workers in the world. 3 types of workers, meaning they're performing actions. The first one is called as worker. Nope, sorry, I messed it up. Laborer. Okay, I'm going to have a British spelling for this one because I keep reading that in Pooja Gurudev's commentary. And the next one is worker. Third one is man of achievement. Man of achievement. The rishis have studied what is a mindset, intention, attitude behind what I do. So they're looking at intention, attitude, attitude behind any actions. So this means it is not the act itself. It's not the action itself we're looking at, but the intention behind it. So when it comes to laborers, their intentions is for one's own self. For one's own self. I don't care what the world has to say. I don't care where I belong. Me, myself, and I are the most important things. If I can take care of that, well, rest, whatever, I don't care. So this is a laborer, that they will only function when it benefits them alone. Then what about worker? We expand that a little bit where he says, he works for an ideal. He works for an ideal. So now he is taking into account the world outside, that he's not an island of his own. And he still wants, though, personal profit, but it is inspired in social, political, religious realms. Okay, what does this mean? So let me put these 2 comments on the board here. So he works for an ideal, but at the same time wants personal gain through social, political, and religious settings. This means that if I'm able to enhance the world I live in and make it more stable, then I will come to benefit with that as well. Therefore, I want to help. So the vision has expanded a little bit, but the selfishness is still there. I know that I'm not on my own. I want to contribute to the society. I want to contribute to politics that deal with the laws and rules of regulations of this world, and even philosophy, and how we should live life. All of these I'm willing to get involved in, because if I can contribute here, I will benefit there. So the idea of utopia becomes really important. Utopia. Gurudev says, this is impossible standard. It won't ever happen. The world will always have its good and bad. That's the nature of duality. You will have it. So this is an impossible idea. But because the equation is, I want to benefit, therefore there's something called utopia there. A very interesting topic, because many believe utopia is the ideal we should reach for. Whereas our scriptures saying, don't mess with that. It's never going to happen. Can you ask a coin to have only one side? Nah, it will have both. So anyway, so now what is this man of achievement? What are they like? They don't jump into the field of any activity because he has to achieve anything or that he's tied down to gain something. He's only involved because it must be done. So, not because he wants anything, but does because he has to. Duty. Okay, when we present this to the youth of today, they will roll their eyes so hard at this definition. Oh, I only do it because it's my duty. I have no gains. Oh gosh, I have so many things I've liked, disliked. In fact, okay, just to prove my point in the direction I'm going in, here's my question to you. And you can respond by using the mic here. If you had to put these three in order, from least to most, who would be the most motivated to act in the world outside? Who would be the most? Go ahead. Tell me why you say labor and why.
Because, again, they think about their own, right? So
Uh-huh.
that's why I believe they'll be the most motivated.
So selfishness
Yeah.
is strong. Oops. Okay. Anyone disagree? Who would you put in the middle? Not here nor there. Who would you put in the middle? Oh, silence. One second, take the mic, please.
You would put the man of achievement in the middle because he'll only act if there is a need rather than being forced to because of his vasana or or his temperament.
So you're saying he's still influenced by vasanas and?
No, he will only act if needed,
Okay.
not because of vasana.
Okay. Not because of vasanas or desires.
Desires, yeah. There's nothing he has to prove. There's nothing else for him to achieve. So he'll only do if maybe there is a need in front of him. That's
Fair enough. Any disagreements? Anyone? Okay.
So the thing is, there's always something that needs to be done.
Mm-hmm.
So I think man of achievement will be most active.
Okay. Duty is infinite.
Yes.
Duty is infinite, so always works. Okay. So you would say he's the most. Whereas selfish is really strong, can really get them motivated. So now we're in a bind here. Who would be motivated the most? Okay, what kind of quality work? Let's expand on this question. Who would give the best quality of output? Best quality?
Man of achievement.
No questions asked. Quality would be the best. Why? Go ahead.
It's a selfless act. They are doing it for their duty, and there is no selfishness there. So they put their 100% into the duty that has to be done at a particular point of time.
Okay. Can I throw in a opposition here? How much time do you take to dress yourself versus your children when you have to go to a really nice hall? A really nice event where you're going to get a lot of pictures taken. How much time do you spend on making yourself look good versus your children to look good? Sorry. I've spent a lot of time on something I really want. Yeah, okay, I have to do my duty, I have to get them dressed. Okay. Sometimes it feels like the experience is opposite. And being in mission as an organization, we see that when you try to get them to do things selflessly, okay, I'll give you a really bad example right now, relevant to recently. Food drive, right? On the flyer, we gave specific instructions saying only these type of foods. What do we find? One Hershey bar or Maggie. It's like, dude, they're not on the rules. And we know that this didn't come from the store that you bought. It came from the leftovers in your pantry. Whereas when donation comes, send in your old clothes, you pick the most ratted ones that barely has any use and saying, yes, I donated. I'm selfless. In fact, this
Depends on the attitude of the person then, right?
It depends on the attitude of the person. But that's exactly what we're looking at, right? Intentions and attitude. If the intention is selfish, what kind of quality of work will I get? And if the intention is selfless, what kind of quality will I get? Although what you're telling me is ideal, sometimes when we look at how things play out in the world around us, we find that it's almost the opposite. People are willing to invest more time and effort when it comes to selfish needs versus selflessness. So this is why that question comes up saying, if you remove I and I want, if I remove desire out of the equation as my motivation, what am I going to be motivated by? This makes no sense to me. It does not, like, I live too much as the selfish need. This is all I know. If I need to remove that, how else am I supposed to function? So now we're sitting here thinking, how can I produce most amount of work with the best quality without selfish desires? We have free will either way. Well,
Dedicate your actions, because the man of achievement, he dedicates every action to the Supreme.
yes. So let me come back around to this definition of karma yoga. Selflessness was the first one. What's the second half here? Dedicated to a higher altar. This is now suddenly a much stronger thing that sits in my heart that I'm willing to work for. When until this altar becomes clear, I'm lost somewhere in between. I've removed myself. I really want to become selfless. That is a good thing. But it's lackluster in my effort and quality of output when I don't have something else to replace it with. So that's a good point that we made. But what was your comment about free will? Can you expand on that a little bit?
So my thought of free will is because it's a cycle of life, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's your past actions that creates your desires, whatever, and then whether you choose the path of prayers or shreyas. So it's your true will or willingness for the end. So it's like the prarabdha, the agama, and it's like it's going in that circle. And that's why I'm saying that, when you're choosing what's going to give you motivation is based on that thought process of where you are going for. So that's why I'm saying free will.
Fair enough. Okay, so I got confused with the old definitions of free will, but you're seeing it in the context of this intellect that makes choices. That is my option here. But in the same thing, when my goal is set, I have to find this motivation. Where is this higher altar? Where is this higher purpose that I want to apply myself? So Pujya Gurudev says, how do we define this higher? How do we define this higher? Whenever I tend to do something more than the self as a purpose, the bigger I make that realm that I'm serving for, the higher is that ideal. Bigger equals higher. Bigger means it's further from this little self. The smallest is me, myself, and I. The less and less it is, the bigger the field is of service. So we say, I want to push from myself to my family. So suddenly my altar of dedication becomes my family. And we see that plenty of times saying, I want my kids to have good culture, I'll bring them to Bal Vihar. But any other volunteering thing, any other jobs, roles, ask them to become teachers, they become scared. No. I just want my kids to learn. I don't want to do anything. So again, a tussle between how selfless do they want to become. Becoming teachers, I would say, my pranams, because you are following the path of Karma Yoga, because you have now decided to dedicate your time, effort, and quality to something more than the self. Not only for your kids, but every kid that comes into this building. Suddenly, how much more time are you spending on the weekends? How many different kinds of choices are you making between Shreyas and Preyas because you want to serve? It has I don't know if you want to give an answer or want to keep it private, it's fine. But how much have you changed after becoming a teacher?
One is that I grew in knowledge, even just knowledge perspective, like learning perspective. And then the other one is understanding it correctly, meaning correct the wrong misunderstandings we've had.
Yes.
And then finally is, okay, how do I implement it in my own life? So I see a change in the texture of my thoughts, also understanding the difference between the very self, meaning the selfish, versus doing something for the benefit of everyone around.
Yes.
So it's a change of thinking.
There's almost a feedback loop, is it not? The more I put in, the more I transform, that allows me to start putting in even more. There seems to be a feedback loop when it comes to this dedication. So, to continue with becoming more and more selfless, we graduated from myself to my family, family to the community I belong to. Then it can even expand to the group of Desis that we are. Irving, Frisco, Plano, Dallas, in fact, even New Jersey, because I come from Jersey, Edison is what comes to mind. Desis, we have to have Desi representation. So sometimes we join different groups that is Indian-based. Then after that, we come to identify with the whole country. What is this country going into? Are we making the right decision? Are the current events, the politics, economy, is everything going right? When we actually start caring about it, we are now stepping a little bit further along. Whenever we have parties at home, don't we have like the split where the ladies go into the kitchen and start talking and the men go into the living room and start having conversations? What is the nature of both of those conversations? Politics and economy in the living room, recipes and childcare in the kitchen. Not that, it's just a natural, expansion of what tendencies that are there, right? Not to say that either one is not good or bad, but look at where the attention is. The men are ready to take on the economy in the world, and the women, because they have to take care of the kids, that becomes their 100%. You can see where the attention is. But when we start really looking into the care of where my kids are, okay, where are they going to school? Where are they learning? Where are their friends? What environments do they get into? Now I have to be careful, is my school education teaching the right things? Do I have to battle textbook topics? Do I need to talk to my teachers? Then those that influence the law. I'm just following a thread to give an example. Let's say I go into school, the textbooks where they teach our children are not the greatest topics when it comes to Hindu representation. Give me a second. Sorry, mid-sneeze. If I want to tackle that, then I'll talk to the teachers. They'll say I'm bound, I can't do anything because the syllabus has been given to me by the state. I go to the state. They say, sorry, we get our curriculum from the universities and it's by national law. Okay, I follow, go to the professors, go to the legislation. Now I'm suddenly dealing with the national identity. If we trace anything and we really want to work and serve, we will find ourselves having to climb the realms that we belong in. Finally, the biggest state would be even humanity and globe at large. If you think about conservational efforts, you're looking at the environment as a holistic sense that I want to deal with environment, global warming, those kinds of issues become on a global scale. After COVID, there's a term where they said that the world has become a lot smaller. It has become a global citizen. I think that's the phrase. So if we really look into it, what are the realms or altars that I can start serving? It's one circle within another circle within another circle that keeps getting bigger and bigger. So therefore, we have to find those that are the bigger ideals. The bigger that ideal is, the deeper is the inspiration we can tap into, and that enthusiasm will be unending. We look forward for every challenge, every action that's there, when we truly believe. When that belief is not there and it's just done for the sake of the looks on the outside, you will find nothing of this is happening. Until I truly believe, then that enthusiasm won't come. So there was a joke that Swamiji used to say. There was one person who would complain, I don't want to go to school. Mom would say, you have to go. He's like, no, my students don't like me. My teachers don't like me. I don't want to go to school. And the mom said, Beta, you better go because you're the principal. So we're kind of in that attitude saying that I don't want to go. Do I have to serve? Do I have to do my duty? Sorry, let me turn it around again. For a man of achievement, right? We look at duty and saying, do I have to? But why? Why am I performing these duties? What is it for? If it's for selflessness, for bigger circles, then man, I'm going to get up every day and do my best. So right now, this feels like the most because we only know the self and egotistic desires. So right now it feels like this is the most motivation. But Shastras tell us, give that self up and discover the limitlessness of inspiration we can achieve if we become man of achievement. There is an infinite amount of inspiration that will come. So the bigger we find, the better we can serve. And once we find that ideal, we have to break it down into doables. Let's say I'm ready to serve as a teacher. You've taken on that and saying, okay, now I'm ready to go. Is it not a big task? Okay, I have to read my content. I have to actually know what I'm teaching. Then I have to figure out activities and get creative. I have to know my students and what mindset they're in, what doubts do they have, and how can I design my lesson in such a way that they can also come to understand. On top of that, I have assembly and play, and I have to collaborate with my co-teachers, and I have to be in sync with the mission. A lot of responsibility comes in. But we can't say, oh, this is too much. Why? Because I've now sunk back into my selfish needs. It's become inconvenient to take on all that work. But if I really care and want to lift up my students, then I am ready to get up every day saying, okay, let's do this. Let's figure it out. I really want my kids to understand this concept better. I want to be more creative. I want to connect with my kids more. Suddenly there's a whole level of enthusiasm. Saturday night you're thinking about it. Sunday morning you're thinking about it. In fact, you can tell how much investment you have the earlier you're starting to think about Balvihar. If you're thinking about it on Monday night for the next Sunday, great. If during the summer you're starting to plan out your entire year's syllabus, even greater. So my point is that the biggest question comes in saying, is it not true that if I remove desires, I become a deadbeat? That I become unmotivated, I become like a rock that doesn't do anything, I just do duties and mechanically go through everything. In fact, it's the opposite. You will get far more inspiration and enthusiasm when I remove that self. We just haven't done it well enough to experience that. And it can be done. So, Now, this enthusiasm, while we're working, we take those responsibilities, break it down into doables, and now I have to ask myself, do I have the skill sets to perform that? And this reminds me in Hanuman Chalisa, one description about Hanumanji. Sukshma rupa dhari siya hi dikava, bikata rupa dhari lanka jarava. In front of Sita Devi, he turned into a small child and said, Amma, and had a full conversation so that he can make her calm, relax, and appease her, bring her back from the depths of her despair. But at the same time, Bikata Rupadari Lanka Jarava, in his furious form, he set the entire Lanka aflame. Both were part of his duty. He was sent by Ramji to make sure that one pacify Sita Devi so that she knows we're coming. At the same time, figure out what's going on in Lanka and address whatever is happening that's there. What was the whole situation about them lighting the fire on his tail? He came in front of Ravana as an ambassador. Ambassadors or messengers by Niti Shastras are not to be killed. So instead, Ravana said, I'll do the next best thing, I will torture you. Even that is wrong. The entire Lanka all contributed to tying the cloth on his tail. They all give pieces of cloth from home. And while they were dragging Hanumanji through the streets, all of them came out and started mocking Hanumanji. You should read the description of this in Valmiki Ramayana. So everyone had a part to play in that wrong act. Therefore, he could address it by burning every rooftop. So, Sukshma Rupadari Siya Hidikava, Bikata Rupadari Lanka Jarava. If my inspiration to serve is that strong, I'm ready to take on whatever skill is required. I don't have it, I'll go learn it. If I have it, I'll refine it. That's the level of enthusiasm I have. So therefore, there's no such thing as failure. No challenge is actually a challenge. Failure becomes a learning opportunity. A challenge becomes a, oh, I had a good phrase, I just lost it. Challenge becomes an opportunity. There we go. Failure becomes learning. Challenge becomes opportunity. So our entire vision changes in how we think and act. And in all of this, I want to maintain my balance and my intellect clear in making the right judgments. That clarity in what my goal is, why I'm serving, what is the plan of action I need to have, what is the skills I need to have along with it, what are the challenges that come with it. This all becomes part of me working well and producing quality work. Swamiji used to say that Bhagwan has 3 Shaktis: Ichha Shakti, Jnana Shakti, and Kriya Shakti. Ichha Shakti, desire to create the world. Jnana Shakti, the know-how of how to create this world. And finally, Kriya, to execute it. He says that he's Ishvara because he puts Jnana before Kriya. We're Manushya because we put Kriya before Jnana. We do it and jump into the action, and then in hindsight 2020 saying, oh, I shouldn't have done that. We do the thinking after we've made the mistakes. So if someone is ready to serve with quality, we will have the desire to serve, think through the plan, be thorough in our understanding, and then execute it well. So meticulousness, thoroughness, comprehensiveness is what's important. So while being so enthusiastic, what are we dealing with this entire time? Ego. Because one thing we can get lost is once we start with a selfless action, we gain skill sets, we gain proficiency, we gain quality results. Who starts to put their head up again? Ego, saying, oh, look what I can do. Look what I've achieved. And suddenly all of this gets undone again. The whole point is, while I'm working, may that ego constantly be put in its place with its head down at the feet of Guru and Bhagwan. That's why we do Namaskara again and again. Physically, I'm telling my head that has this pride and ego, put yourself down. Keep yourself in the lowest place because you don't belong here when there's so much more to achieve here. So, if there's any one statement I would want to leave you with, is clarity leads to conviction. So now I'll write this down here. Clarity leads to conviction, which leads to willpower, which then leads to constant fountain of inspiration. And this is that feedback loop that comes in. That inspiration continues to add clarity. So when it comes to a man of achievement, we have to really look at role models that are here. And I will take none other than Puja Gurudev as that man of achievement. How much did he work? 22 hours out of 24 hours a day? There's no such thing as vacations or a break. Every moment was a dedication. Even the letters he wrote, his attitude behind it was, this is my archana. Bhagwan is in every single person that wrote that letter to me. My responses is like the flower we all offer for every name of Bhagwan. So he treated that desk as his altar. He treated that letter as his offering. And each sadhaka that asked him a question is his form of Bhagwan. So if you look at, I would highly recommend reading through Vedanta through his letters. Every single time he wrote a letter, he said, "Oh Bhagwan, oh Devi." He would address them as Bhagwan and saying, "Always at your feet." So that bhava continues to be in any one of his actions. And because he wanted to help Hindus become Hindus, and to bring Shastras from the Himalayas to every single individual in Bharat, he followed the example of Ganga Devi and rushed out into the world. He came all the way to here in Dallas, Texas. He has reached every corner of this world because of his selfless attitude. So don't tell me that this is any stronger than this. That is like a blip compared to how much inspiration can come if we truly become selfless. So there's no question about, will I have motivation after I give up the self? You just see how much motivation you have after you give up that self. Try it. So this is the attitude of Karma Yoga. So again, we come back to the definition. Everyone repeat it. Karma Yoga is action dedicated to a higher altar. And that becomes clarity in why the heck I'm doing that in the first place. Clarity that I am, and I wish I had it all on the same page. Sorry. Clarity. Clarity is moksha is my goal. No ifs, ands, or buts. The only way to get to moksha is I have to exhaust my vasanas. The root of vasana is I and I want. Therefore, I shall perform any actions through the attitude of karma yoga, selfless actions dedicated to a higher altar. If you look at any examples of Shreyas, you will see this bhava behind it. That's why it makes it Shreyas. Anything that is selfish becomes preyas. This is the fundamental principle here. Why? Before we can even enter into bhakti yoga, before we can even understand Bhagwan in his nature, Bhagwan in his glory to even become bhaktas, karma yoga is the first step. Grahastha ashrama is meant for karma yoga. We think Grahastha ashrama is to fulfill all of our desires. No. Karma yoga is desire exhaustion. May I perform the duties I have been given in my ashrama so that I may perform it in such a way that I can get rid of it. Clarity is I know what the goal is and how to get there. My conviction is I believe that by performing this, I will get there. And my conviction in which realm of service have I come to, this higher dedication to a higher altar. That is my conviction. Because of that, see the amount of willpower I will gain to be able to serve like that. And when I serve with such great willpower, that transforms into inspiration that then comes right back to the beginning saying, good, I'm making progress on why I'm here in the first place. And so that experience you have as a teacher, the more you give, the more you transform, the more you transform, the more you're able to give. It's a feedback loop. So this is the principle of karma yoga in the context of how it deals with vasanas. I hope this was able to answer some fundamental questions about karma yoga, and this can be translated across the board for any syllabus that we talk about. In each of your lessons, find ways where you can incorporate the idea of selflessness and what dedication to a higher altar looks like in that particular section. Ramayana, Bhagavatam, Mahabharata, point out where does this come into play. Know what you have, how we must. I mean, I don't need to explain self-unfoldment in Introduction to Hinduism. It just talks about it. But hold on to this because of all the sadhanas that we can do, this is the beginning and this is the start. Everything else will fall into place until we hold on to this important word, selflessness. So with that, yes, we can close for today. And one thing is, next week we won't have class. The following week we will have class here. And Hariji and I will not be here for the winter break. So it's just one lesson. So I was thinking, now that we have time, if you have specific questions, we can do a general Q&A during teacher satsang when we come back. If you'd like to ask any questions, doubts, Vedantic topics, don't ask like, what do I do for Christmas today? No. But general Vedantic concepts that you'd like addressed, I may try to answer it during that Q&A, but it will also help me address some topics later down the road if it becomes relevant. But maybe we can try that for next teacher satsang. So please send me your questions by the end of next Sunday, so that will allow me time to study a little bit more before we come back to class. Yes? Okay, cool. So with that, let's do closing prayers. Om Purnamada. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om. Thank you so much.